You're listening to the TV Obsessive channel, presented by TVObscast.com.
Hello, welcome back to the TV Obsessive Podcast, episode 89. My name is Ryan Kirksey, writer and contributor for TVObsessive.com, and joined once again by Cameron Crane, the executive editor for the site. Happy Valentine's Day. Lots of people we've been watching in need of Valentine's, it seems like. I don't know, are you sending one to Helena Egan or anyone on the Yellow Jackets cast today?
On the Yellow Jackets cast, yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know. Do send Valentine to Natalie or something. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Which Natalie would you rather go on a date
Send a
with?
Valentine to teenage Natalie from teenage Cameron. How about that?
Would you rather go on a Valentine's date with Natalie from Severance or Natalie from Yellow Jackets?
Oh, actually going on a date with Natalie from Severance would be pretty fucking interesting. Right?
Yeah,
So,
probably
uh,
better conversation.
maybe, but it would just be weird. I don't know. I'm almost I'm so curious what that experience would be like. I'd almost choose it, I think. But yeah, so we're gonna get to season 2, episode 5 of Severance today, the latter part of the pod called Trojan's Horse. Hopefully you've watched it. First, as per usual, we'll chat about what we've been watching, and we have some news items to run through, most of which will be, I think, pretty quick. But I think our events first. Um, let's start with Yellow Jackets, right? Yellow Jackets came out today, season 3. Um, so I'm looking forward to. I haven't had a chance to watch the premiere yet. I don't think you have either.
No, I haven't. This is one of those, at least if you're on the Central or East Coast, that drop in the middle of the night. So I've not had a chance to watch the 2 episode premiere that came out.
Yeah, that's what I was saying to you. Like I am a bit of a night owl, but I'm not going to start watching 2 episodes at 3 a.m. That's a bit. If I were on the West Coast, I
Yeah.
would start at midnight. But so I'm going to get to that later on this evening, hopefully, and I will be writing on this show week to week as I have in the past. One thing we do have out today already is the interview I did last week with the creators of the credits. This was a really interesting conversation. I'd encourage people to check it out on tvobsessive.com. I had the chance to talk to the Digital Kitchen team, Mason Nickel and Rachel Brickle, about how they came up with the idea of the credits, and a whole bunch of stuff in there. I thought it was a really interesting conversation.
Yeah, it's a really exceptional piece, just so much detail and I mean they could have gone extremely technical, but it's very, I think, wide ranging and broad in scope. Anybody can sort of absorb it and find interesting stuff in there.
Yeah, there were some great little nuggets. To drop one, the fact that like when they started out, the initial idea was going to be like Russian fairy tale etchings with set to Portishead.
Yeah,
I was like,
I
what that?
love that.
I said to Mesa during the interview, I don't think it made the article, but I was like, oh, that actually sounds pretty cool. Yeah. Um. So yeah, I mean, but the sequence that they came up with, I think, is just it stands out.
It's
And
phenomenal. Yeah.
part of the impetus for this, I wrote a couple of articles digging into the credits with season 1, with season 2, and I can't think of other opening title sequences that are quite like this, because you feel like, oh man, there's clues in there, and
Yeah.
so it really encourages us to kind of like pick it apart and all of that.
Yeah.
It's
Interestingly, I've
really
seen
well
people do
done.
that with the new Severance credits.
Hmm.
A lot to parse there. But yeah, that's sort of becoming a thing now. See what you can drop and include and hide inside the credits.
I honestly thought about it with Severance with both seasons. I mean,
Hmm.
I definitely like the opening credits, but I don't know. They feel to me so um just kind of more thematic,
Mm.
and I'm not sure how much we should read into the imagery.
Yes.
Whereas with
Yes.
Yellow Jackets, they're showing us frames from the show, and it's clear.
Exactly.
So it really does kind of stand out like, oh, what's this? When's this going to happen? What's that going to be? Because it's just a frame from the show, and then it's like distorted and all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, the Severance sequence is cool as well, for sure. Um, Beyond that, I did Return to Paradise, which we talked about a couple weeks ago. It's funny if people were listening to that pod. I said I turned it off after 5 minutes or something,
Yeah.
and then you said, "Oh, what the first episode is really good," and lots of other people were talking about it. There's buzz around it. So I finally went and put it back on, and I turned it off literally right before it kicks into action.
Yeah.
Like
You did.
30 seconds at max before it was like, oh, now we're going, you know. And I found it entertaining. I don't know. I watched the first 2 episodes. I might watch more. It's one of those where it might depend in part on how much buzz there continues to be around it,
Yeah.
because I find it entertaining, but I don't know that I would quite say it is, quote, good.
I did catch up on, I think we're through 5 now. I did catch up this week, so I'm through the current episode. The writing still leaves a lot to be desired. But there are still some interesting mystery pieces to it, and the how and the why and the diving into, I don't know, that there's some silo aspects to it too. What's really happening up above? So
Yeah.
it dives into some questions that I find interesting. It's not as thoughtful or emotional as something like Silo, but I'll stay tuned and see how they solve the mysteries. It's only 8 episodes, it seems like, so just 3 more.
Oh, really? So, yeah, maybe I'll have to try to catch up and be on time for the finale. If I can find time with my writing on
Yeah.
Severance each week, writing on Yellow Jackets each week, and so on. Other thing to briefly mention, the season 3 of The Floor premiered after the Super Bowl. Everyone knows that I love The Floor and like my game shows. So I put on the first episode the other night, and I started watching it, and I thought, wait, is that the guy from Clerks? One of the contestants.
Right. There's that,
And
yes.
I am like 99.9% sure that it is indeed Brian O'Halloran who played Dante in Clerks. He hasn't had the chance to like get up and do a round yet, but they'll show people down on the floor and they'll
Yeah.
make little comments and stuff. And they did one cut scene with him where they do like the confessional kind of style thing,
hmm
and it said Brian.
Oh,
So like
I
I'm pretty
checked.
sure that it's Brian
I checked
O'Halloran.
out his Wikipedia page, and somebody's already updated to say that he was on the 3rd season of The Floor. So,
Oh, really?
somebody thought enough to think, yes, that we can include this now. So, I think that is the case. And you know what's funny about that? I don't know. I mean, just because the last name sort of signifies this and sort of looks like he could be from there. But I heard a story that The Floor is actually filmed in Ireland, because of the huge tax subsidies that they get there. I don't know if that's true or not, but people
Hmm.
were reporting that that's the case, or they're going to move there or something. Um, so I don't know if this was a, you
I'm not
know,
sure. I don't know about that.
move out of the U.S.
Uh,
thing or not.
I do recall, now I'd have to do research again. I recall when I was first looking into The Floor that it is one of these shows that was originally created in another country,
Mm,
but part of me wants to say like Australia. But
yeah,
now I'm just floating in the air on memory, so don't take my word for it. I don't think Brian O'Halloran is Irish,
Irish.
Ryan. I'm pretty sure he's like from New Jersey,
It just sounds
right?
like it.
He was just like one of Kevin Smith's friends. He roped into with this low budget production of Clerks, and I mean, if you look at his acting credits, I don't think he's done much besides Clerks and Clerks 2. You know,
No.
so
All right. The
look
floor is filmed in Ardmore Studios in Bray, Ireland. There you go.
interesting. Okay, well,
It cost less to send all those people over there than it did to film it in LA. That's the story that I read.
what a world. Um, well, let's push forward. We got some. Maybe we could start with the casting news. I mean, there's a whole
Sure.
bunch of things that caught my eye. I don't know how much we want to talk about any of these. Let's rattle them off, and then we can talk about them as we please. Um, John Lithgow probably going to play Dumbledore in the Harry Potter series, which is interesting. He's American. I don't know if that matters. Um, Peter Dinklage has signed on to the cast of Dexter Resurrection.
Yeah, I
Over
mean,
under odds on him being a serial killer.
I mean, I'm not taking the opposite of that.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I mean, he's now joined a long line of people joining these
Oh
Dexter
yeah.
spin-offs. Yeah.
There have been some other announcements I've seen week to week that I've just said, well, we'll skip that one. We don't need to do every Dexter announcement, But Peter
Right.
Dinklage, I love Peter Dinklage, so wanted to mention that one. Amy Adams has signed on to the Apple TV Plus Cape Fear series, which does tick up my desire to watch it. Javier Bardem was already cast in this, so we've got Javier Bardem and Amy Adams.
Yeah. So did you
Sign
get
me
the
up.
sense from this that Javier Bardem is the villain in this show, or is Amy Adams and Javier Bardem sort of the Nick Nolte and I forget who the other one was, the Jessica Lange character that are married in that movie?
I'm not positive. I'm not. I
Yeah,
don't.
I'm
I
not
have
sure that
not
it says
seen
here.
who they are playing. I mean, of course, it would make sense if Javier Bardem is the quote unquote bad guy or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Given his standout performance in No Country for Old Men and things like that.
Yeah.
Jeremy Strong is going to be in a series called Boys from Brazil for Netflix. It's apparently based on a book and has to do with hunting Nazis.
Yeah, this one interested me only because there's a I don't know if you've ever seen the movie X-Men First Class with Michael Fassbender
Yeah.
with him as Magneto. So there's a whole storyline there where, of course, his backstory is he was a boy during World War II, a Jewish boy who was separated from his parents. Parents were killed. So as he develops his powers, there's a whole storyline where he goes down to South America and hunts Nazis and kills them. And so this was a real thing, like that Nazis
Oh
sort of
yeah.
migrated to South America. And so this is apparently an excellent book, and I'd be excited to see Jeremy Strong in a role like this.
Yeah, there was another series on Prime Video a couple years ago called Hunters.
Yeah,
That was about a similar thing. And yeah, these definitely are based on real history. It's a question of style. Like I got the feeling
yeah.
that Hunters, which I never watched, but I got the feeling it was a bit like kind of overblown. And
Hmm.
I maybe not, maybe I'm wrong about that, and I'm just like confusing it with Inglorious Bastards or something.
Oh, yeah.
But I kind of got that feeling that it was large in its tone or something.
Yes.
Um, Maybe this one will be a little bit different. Kind of curious to check it out. The one of these that I am most excited about and was most prone to want to say anything about was Ben Stiller signing on as the lead in a show called The Band for HBO. He's returning to TV. Right, I mean, of course, he's been directing Severance or a lot of the episodes of Severance. I mean, very much involved in Severance behind the camera, but he hasn't
Yeah.
actually been on TV since like the Ben Stiller show.
Was there a little part of you that thought, oh, I don't want you to stretch yourself too thin and take any brain power away from Severance because of how sort of wonderfully creative and intriguing it's been?
No, because I mean, look, I do not at all want to demean Ben Stiller's contributions to Severance because I think they are quite substantial, but it does feel in part to me like out in the world, he's almost getting more credit than maybe he should because he's Ben Stiller, and we all know who Ben Stiller is, as
Yeah.
opposed to like Dan Erickson. I mean,
Yeah,
right?
it's Dan Erickson and the writers that really deserve a lot of what the praise that's coming towards them. Yeah,
Yeah, Dan Erickson like created Severance. He's the showrunner and so on and so forth. And so yeah, again, like not at all to demean Ben Stiller's contribution. That's not what I mean. But I don't have that worry about him being too distracted, I guess.
yeah.
The other thing I want to mention on this is it's from the creators of Search Party, which is a good show. Sarah Violet Bliss and Charles Rogers. And I don't know why, but I feel the need to mention that I kind of know Sarah Violet Bliss personally, although I haven't seen her for
Oh,
like
okay,
15 years. But she's my ex-girlfriend's sister's friend.
okay.
But
That's only three. It's only 3 degrees separation. That's
I
fine.
mean, we've hung out.
Yeah,
Again, it's been maybe 15 years or whatever, but I remember being in New York City and she was enrolling at NYU in the film program and all of that. So I remember going to like a table read of a script she'd written and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not trying to like claim deep friendship or anything. It's more just that whenever I see her
yeah.
succeeding, I always think,
No,
like good for Sarah Violet.
yeah,
Way to
yeah.
go, Sarah and Charles, So
I mean,
um
and the concept of the show sounds fascinating.
it does.
We haven't said too much about that, but really just I mean, a sense of just scanning through here that it looks he is the lead man or promoter sort of a band. Is that what I understand here
Yeah, I think
about this
so.
show?
It sounds very
Yeah,
interesting. Yeah. And I imagine it'll
yeah,
be comedic. I think the word dramedy might have been used in this
yeah.
write-up.
Talent mogul whose career is beset by scandal, tasked with forming a new act to save his career. So I bet there's going to be some Ben Stiller humor in it, certainly some drama to it. So yeah, so HBO, yeah, I mean certainly this will go on the list to check out.
Yeah. Also, I mean, this is very minor related to HBO, but apparently, True Detective season 5 is going to be in New York City. We know this. I think it's going to be in Queens, for whatever it's worth. But anyway,
Yeah, Jamaica Bay, Issa Lopez is back after a successful run doing True Detective Night Country. I found this interesting because the I sort of blocked season 2 from my brain. I don't recall where that one is set, but 1, 3, and 4 are very rural, non-urban, out of the way locations that not many people would ever visit. And now we're going to New York City. So I'm interested to see how they're
yeah.
going to sort of take that New York City detective genre and really drop it into the True Detective universe. But I mean, certainly, yeah, this will be appointment viewing, whatever they end up doing.
I just Googled really quickly, and apparently season 2 is set in a fictional town. I was gonna guess LA, but it's set in a fictional city in California.
Oh, okay.
So I wasn't wildly off in thinking it was LA, but yeah, it is interesting, that we've got Issa Lopez again. We were big fans of Night Country. We talked about it on the pod, and that setting really worked well. And yeah, I did think it was interesting to think about, okay, well, now they're going to go more urban, as it
Yeah.
were. So
And how many shows have been about New York detectives? So what will be their spin on that? Certainly character driven, arc driven. But it's just I'm excited to see sort of their, like I said, their take on this genre.
yeah, I mean, it is interesting to me that it is not in Manhattan.
Right.
Jamaica Bay is in uh oh, I see. I wanted to say Queens, but apparently it's the western tip of Long Island. So
Oh, okay. Okay.
yeah. So I guess I shouldn't have said New York City even necessarily. Well,
Yeah.
as someone who lived in New York City for a decade and a half, Long Island is not New York City.
Definitely not.
Um,
Definitely not. Yeah, that'll be an interesting setting then. So they're not dropping them into, 48th and 6th or whatever. So yeah, it'll be an interesting setting there.
yeah. Handmaid's Tale finally coming. It's been 3 years.
Yeah,
Finally
man.
coming in April.
Another one of these 3-year waits. This has been a long, long time coming. It was besieged sort of by some of the same delays that Severance had, obviously with the strike. There were some rewrites and reshoots for this. They wanted to get the last season right. But yeah, April 8th, last season of Handmaid's Tale finally coming. I believe dropping with 3 episodes on the first night and then week to week on Hulu. And then I guess the corollary to this is the spinoff show called The Testaments is coming
Yeah.
probably next year. A character named Hannah, which if you're familiar with the Handmaid's Tale plot, that name will mean something. That has been cast, or the lead has been cast. So they're, and apparently the executive producer for Handmaid's Tale has left to go run The Testaments. So they really want to sort of build out this universe.
That'll be interesting. Yeah. Um, we've talked about this before. I'm way behind on The Handmaid's Tale,
Yeah. I'm gonna
and
need a long refresher video on what happened because after 3 years, I've forgotten a lot.
I've thought about trying to catch up, but now that we get the release date, I'm like, oh, that's actually pretty soon. I don't know if I can
Yeah.
rush that much, and I should have started sooner, I guess, if I was going to try to catch up on The Handmaid's Tale by the end. But glad that's coming. Rings of Powers getting a third season. Do you watch that
Yeah.
show?
No, I did not. Well, I watched the first season. I did not watch the second season. Didn't even start it, actually. I flagged this because this is one of the most expensive shows on television, and it's getting a third season. Obviously, Amazon and Bezos have the money to do it. The numbers for all sort of the story around it, the numbers have been declining in this in terms of viewership. I'm just always fascinated by sort of the things that people include in these pieces that clearly have come from, PR press releases. Amazon says 170 million viewers worldwide have checked out the show. Well, yeah, I bet that many people checked out the show,
Yeah,
but
right.
not that many people have watched 2 seasons of the show. I guarantee you.
Yeah, what's the completion percentage or whatever,
Exactly. Exactly.
I haven't even checked it out. So I mean,
Yeah.
It's
No,
always
I didn't
seemed
never picked up the second season. Not didn't grab me after the first.
it feels like it's got mixed reviews, and then my reaction sort of from the beginning was, I like the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings movies, but actually I never even watched the Hobbit ones. Like they'd already lost me.
Yeah, yeah.
They basically lost me at the moment when they said, you know what, we're not just going to make one Hobbit movie. We're going to make three Hobbit movies.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here and I'm like, there already exists an animated Hobbit movie that's like 80 minutes long. And you're telling me you're going to drag the story out to like 9 hours?
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
about that. So,
That's pretty much how I felt. I love that three movie canon, and we'll just for me it can stick to that.
yeah. You want to talk about SNL a bit? 50th
Yeah, just
anniversary.
just I mean it's sort of everywhere this week, right? You can't go to any site without looking at everyone's list of the best characters and the best sketches and an oral history of this and a look back at that. So I'm actually frankly very fascinated to watch it this weekend. It's going to be sort of this weird Sunday night primetime live special that is the 50th anniversary special. I mean, they've released 100 names of people that are going to be on the show. They're going to sort of make appearances. One of the more fascinating, I think, subplots of this is they're doing it in their normal studio, right? Studio 8H on at 30 Rock. They have come out and said there are 300 seats in this studio. They have given out or are giving out 300 tickets to this and have said they are not expanding it beyond that. And so it's become like the hottest ticket that you could ever
Oh,
get.
wow.
And so even like A-listers, celebrities, people that want to get in have been told no, they cannot have a ticket because it's such a select group of people that Lorne Michaels is like handpicking to go into this show. So it's just kind of be fascinating to see who's there, who's not there, and what do they come up with after 50 years. Maybe revisit some of the old sort of greatness of the show from years past.
That is kind of interesting about the audience. I never went to Saturday Night Live. I went to some other things in the city, like The Daily Show, and I went
Yeah.
to the Colbert Report one once. But those things, it was like you could get like sign up and get
Yeah.
tickets
Yep.
basically. But it was all the story with SNL was always like people camp out overnight to get in there. Like I'm
Exactly.
not doing that. That's not worth it, man. Um, so really going in the other direction if instead they're like hand picking 300 people or something. I don't
Yeah.
know. Um,
Yeah, just hand out tickets on the street, just to 300 random people. That'd be the way to do it.
oh man, could you imagine if it was just the first 300 people to get in line?
They'd have been in line months ago.
Oh yeah, I mean, you have just people camping out for the past month or whatever. Yeah,
Exactly. Exactly.
um, all right. So I think that covers it in terms of things we had on our list for the news and so on. So let's talk about Severance.
Yes.
We're up to season 2, episode 5, so we're halfway through season 2 already, unfortunately, because I don't want it to end. So spoilers will be on the table here for everything in Severance through season 2, episode 5, on the other side of a brief musical interlude. So we'll be back with you in about 10 seconds.
Okay, we are back to talk about Severance season 2, episode 5, titled Trojan's Horse. Episode 5 written by Megan Ritchie and directed by Sam Donovan. The episode opens with a mysterious man collecting what looks like dental supplies from O&D before taking them on the elevator that is in the exports hall. Still recovering from the Ortvo experience, Drummond and Natalie convince Helena she has to go back down to the severed floor as Helly and cannot fake it this time. Helly rejoins what remains of the MDR team and all ask for a funeral for Irv after learning that he will not be coming back. After eulogizing Irv, Dylan finds a note that Irv left behind the hang in there poster on the wall of the break room that has directions to the elevator that leads to the exports hall. The team gets Helly up to speed when she learns that she's an Egan, that Audi Mark's wife is Gemma, and Helena was using her trickery to pass information back to Lumen when she was posing as Helly. Mark clearly now distrusts Helly and does not reveal to her all that happened when she was being impersonated. Milchick receives his first monthly performance review, where he vows to tighten the leash on his employees and then confronts Mark about having sex with Helena. Outside of Lumen, Rickon, working on his updated copy of the UUR, Irv makes another phone call before noticing that Bert is following him. The two connect and deduce that they must have been romantically involved as innies. The episode ends with Mark visiting with Dr. Ragabi. They're looking through Gemma's old things to try to spark some sort of movement in the reintegration. Mark starts flashing back and forth between his innie and outie self, or finally seeing Gemma alive on the severed floor. After Woe's Hollow, I watched this for the first time and thought this was kind of like, I don't know, the cigarette after the sex, I guess, sort of like a little break. But watching it a second time, there is a lot of interesting stuff here that we can get into.
There is, for sure. I mean, I was surprised, first of all, we were talking last week, we were asking all these questions about how that orc bow fits into the timeline, how they got out there, all that kind of stuff. And we don't really get answers on a lot of the questions we were asking. And I don't know if we will ever on some of them. But my first reaction watching this episode was really sort of surprised that it seems like,
Yeah.
oh no, things were in order, you know. And so now we're after the orc bow. My
And a
biggest
very,
question
very
remains,
quick explanation of what, how they got them to do it and when it was, just over a weekend.
yeah, I mean, almost most of it you have to read into it in that phone call that Mark has with Devin, right? She's like, how was your work thing this weekend or whatever? It was fine.
Yeah.
I did note to you, we were talking about it by DM and stuff. I do think there's something to read into there, right? So at least I feel like I have an answer on something, because Mark says as Innie fell off a rope and got wet. I'm taking that as really indicating that I'm right, that they were all like switched unconscious at the end. Um, Probably switched unconscious in some fashion. I don't know what that looks like
Yeah.
or if we'll ever see it, but to get them out there, because again, it doesn't make sense that the Audis would go out there to the snowy cliffs and then say, okay, turn me off. That just doesn't make sense. And that, at the end of last week, when Milchick says now, we were also saying, it wouldn't really make sense that he was flipping them back to their Audis then.
Mm-hmm.
So if he flipped them unconscious, Mark had been sitting on the rock by the water, maybe he slips into the water, because he must have been pretty wet for Lumen to have to tell him, some story like
Yeah,
that.
and in that episode, we see him rush down and sort of help hold Helly after
Yeah.
she comes out of the water, but it's not like he jumps in the water after her. I've seen some people speculate this week that when at the part where the three remaining MDR go into Milchick's office at the very beginning and ask for some explanations, he starts to explain to them what the Glasgow block is. And also, the Glasgow block allows Audis to, and Helly interrupts saying, what, who was I, what was I doing? And so there's sort of this explanation that should be coming or might be coming of what they can do and what a Glasgow block is, allows them to actually manipulate inside someone's brain.
You don't think it's just as simple as the Glasgow block allows the Audi to persist, on the severed floor or something?
Yeah.
Like the rest of the sentence was just something simple like that.
I think that I think it's, well, while not the Glasgow one, it's one of those list of things that's in the security
Mm-hmm.
protocol, right? There was the hive or whatever, there was the
Yeah,
elephant, there
yeah.
was the Glasgow, So it's one of those things allows them to, shut off or turn off, turn on, or sort of put in a neutral state, I guess, for lack of a better term.
I'm still kind of wondering about the beehive one. But that's the one that stood out to me. Like, what does that, connote? Like
Exactly.
what do you start
Exactly.
imagining with some kind of beehive protocol? Yeah. Also wanted to note quickly, talking about last week's episode, we sort of missed this. We were talking about their doppelgangers and whether they're clones, whether they're perhaps robots. Not that we have an answer on that, but did see a number of people noting that they're listed in the credits as shadows, like Shadow Mark, Shadow Dylan, etc., and that they were played by other actors, right? So they didn't just have Adam Scott as Shadow Mark; they have a different actor as Shadow Mark.
Right.
And it's interesting that that same actor was credited back in episode 1 as Man in Hallway, which I take it refers to the man we saw in the hallway when Mark found the wellness office no longer existed.
Yeah, this was there and then disappeared for a second. Yeah.
So there's something there to like kind of bear in mind in the background, like what's going on with these shadow versions of them, and maybe we did have indeed seen one of them in the office before, and so on. So I did want to mention that and make sure we didn't kind of miss it entirely here. Where should we go next?
What about starting with sort of the Helly Mark business,
Okay.
right? So this, they've had revealed at the end of last episode who Helena was, who Helly was. She comes back down. I understand the sense of, well, we can't trust her now at all, because how are we to ever know with 100% certainty that this is Helly? And there's the sense of Mark has done all this work to find Gemma with Helena. He slept with Helena. All the secrets that they were talking about went to Helena. I don't know. Does it seem like he's just being unfair to Helly? I mean, Helly calls him out on it, but in one way, I sort of side with Mark, because you did this even unconsciously.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think his reaction makes total sense. I'm not going to go so
Yeah.
far as I'm taking his side or something like that, but it makes sense. And one of the things I thought was interesting is how the show makes sure we know that it's the Indy Heliar.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. We know for sure. We saw that conversation with Natalie and Drummond, and Helena doesn't really want to do it, and so on and so forth. Right. So I thought that was kind of interesting to approach it that way. So we know for sure. But if you take the perspective of Mark, of course, he doesn't know.
Yeah.
How could he know?
How could he know? Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And at one point he asked her that, and she said, "Well, you just have to trust me." So how am I supposed to trust you when, for a week or whatever, it's actually been your outie down here? And I thought it all played really well. She asks, you really couldn't tell, obviously not, and it makes sense that it would be just like this, basically. I don't think it's going to quite stay like this. Something has to break in one direction or another. But yeah, I definitely did think that was interesting. And further, well, what do you think about the fact that related to all of this, part of Mark's reaction is, oh, well, then nothing matters. There's no reason to continue our mission. They're smarter than us, and so on. What do you think about that aspect of it?
Yeah. I don't know if it was sort of a, straw that broke the camel's back moment, but he just seemed like he finally in this season has been, let's push back. Let's move forward. Let's find the answers. Let's get to the bottom of these things. Let's figure out what's happening here. And the person that he likely trusted the most feels like was completely, I guess completely turned against him, for lack of a better term. And so with as much loss as he's experienced, right, with losing Gemma, with a life that's just been crumbling, with losing Helly, or not being the person that he thought that she was, he's just at a breaking point, at a giving up point. Why do I even want to start all over again looking for Gemma? Even despite the progress we've made, I don't know, just got a sense of sort of a broken man just sort of giving up at this point.
Right, which is interesting because Mark's Indy has never really been like that. Mark's Audi has always been like that in a certain way, right? And I do think that it makes sense. He's also becoming flippant towards Milchick. He's like, hey, did Miss Wong take notes for an article in the bullshit Gazette? Yeah, because he's kind of seeing through things, but at the same time, then his reaction is like, all right, fine, let's just work.
Yeah. I did see an interesting theory about this. I forget if this was, I'm reading too much. I'm too much online about this show, but one thing that the hypothesized that they're positioning him to act that way at work because it mirrors how he acts as an outie self. So as he reintegrates, it's harder to tell the difference between, oh, this is no longer any Mark. This must be someone else.
Yeah, and I did have this thought. I think I said something briefly in the article I wrote, my recap article, which people can go check out on TVObscast.com. I encourage you to do so. I think I said something at least briefly about this, though. I mean, but I don't know. I mean, I think it works really well because to kind of start over. I think this is correct. I think that the writers and so on have done something that really works well insofar as the change in the demeanor of any Mark is going to create some cover for the possibility of a reintegrated Mark at work. Whereas, just a couple weeks ago, I was sitting here saying, Mark can't show up reintegrated. They're going to see right through that immediately.
Exactly.
Right? But at the same time, at least how I'm thinking about it, the fact that any Mark would be reacting in this sort of way to the events that he's experienced makes sense just in terms of any Mark. So
Yep.
I think they've set it up in a way, you could complain about it seeming like almost too fortuitous or something that the two things align, but
Yeah.
whatever, it's a TV show. So I do think that's interesting. Because at the same time, we could start speculating that, well, part of the change in his demeanor already is from the reintegration process as well, right?
Yeah. So we get a little bit more about that process in this episode. It looks like it involves a lot of pills. It involves a pretty disgusting looking juice diet.
I don't want to say what that actually reminds me of. It's what he's drinking. I don't know. It looks pretty
Yeah.
gross. Let's leave it at that.
And he gives the impression that it's quite
Mhm.
disgusting to drink. Ragabi is sort of pushing back on moving fast on this, but then they start going through Jim's things, and he's having these headaches at work. There's a cough that's sort of unexplained, and then at the end, of course, we see this flipping back and forth where it seems like it's his outie self seeing or being on a severed floor. But I don't know. I always thought reintegration was you're combining the memories in the mind of both of these things, not like you're flipping back and forth in between places in sort of a hallucinogenic state.
Right, except if you think back on what we've seen with Petey,
Yeah,
he was having similar kinds of struggles. He was having flashes
right.
and things like this. He never achieved some kind of full reintegration that was, I don't know, harmonious, if you like.
Yeah.
So I'm with you insofar as like you want to think that should be the idea, but
Hmm.
I do think it makes sense that if you think about the innie and the outie as just such separate consciousnesses to the point of functionally being distinct persons
Yeah.
in their identity, that trying to like merge those together would not be a smooth thing. So I think it makes sense, the um hearing Miss Casey tell him about facts about his outie
Yeah.
um landed for me in a more direct way as something that he'd be experiencing. The visuals, I was a little less sure how we were supposed to read them. I mean, I thought
Yeah.
it worked as
Yeah.
a TV show, but like, what
Yeah.
Mark
Those sort of
is,
auditory cues you can think of, well, there's memories reemerging, but it's, to go from his basement to the floor and
yeah.
then seeing Gemma, who is, or Miss Casey, as far as we know, is not on that floor. She is down in the testing floor, the exports hall. So sort of this pseudo reality of what's actually happening there.
Well, right, and she wouldn't have been saying these lines in the hallway. They would have been in the wellness office and so on. Whatever, right? I think just accept it, but
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I mean, I did think it was well done there. I also wanted to note, how going back to Helly, um, how Mark doesn't want to tell her anything, doesn't care what happened to her when she took the place of Rowdy. Dylan drops that Miss Casey is Mark Saudi's wife, but there is no indication that Helly's been informed that Mark Saudi's wife is supposed to be dead. I don't know.
That's a good point. I hadn't even put that together yet. Yeah, she's given information about who she is. Does she even know the wellness is closed? Does she know that Miss Casey is no longer there? Yeah, I don't think she has that information yet. Maybe we're just left to presume that that's part of other extracurricular conversations. But yeah, she's not directly given that information.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Just because they are clearly playing with what Heliar knows and what she doesn't know. She doesn't
Mhm.
know that Mark and Audi Helena hooked up in the tent. Milchick presents that to Mark almost as a threat towards the end of the episode. I, I think she's going to find out,
Yeah, yeah. I
and
mean,
it's just kind of where we go from there.
and how does Milchick know? I mean, I presume they were watching them or something, or
Lumen
cameras
is
in the tent.
listening, right?
Yeah, always.
Lumen is listening. Um, we've got the speaking of Milchick, his performance review, which I thought was quite entertaining. I presume that it was Miss Wong who made the complaints about him using big words and putting paper clips the wrong way. You with me on that?
I loved the interaction between Milchick and Miss Wong in this episode. She's clearly not happy with the status of what their working relationship is, and she's finally starting to push back a little bit. She's like, "Well, what's the way I can push back more? Oh, I can tell them about his improper use of paper clips and using big words." Yeah, that's exactly how I read it as well.
Yeah, I think she was the source. She made, and she was probably a meaningful source on the calamitous Ortvo also.
Probably so.
So she's funny. They insist on having a funeral for Irv. Miss Wong doesn't think they should do this because it makes them feel like people. And that's deepening her character
Yeah.
as well. But I also noted in the margins here that Milchick asked her to prepare a bereavement kit, and she says she thought those were for people who died on the severed floor. There's definitely implication here that sometimes people die on the severed floor.
Yeah, I guess goat accident, or
Yeah.
yeah, fell on some of the dental instruments, or I don't know, but yeah, apparently they're prepared for that type of scenario.
We've got the machine that makes melon heads ready.
Yeah, there's got to be some kind of machine with a blade that carves people's heads out of watermelons, so that there could be an accident there, I guess.
Yeah, it's like a 3D melon printer kind of
Yeah.
thing going on. Must be something like I don't know why I really found myself, particularly when I was rewatching this episode last night. I found myself getting hung up on the melon for a minute. It was like, why do they like melons so much? And like at one point you see Dylan just eating this like massive piece of melon head.
Yeah.
It was like no way that I would not want to eat that much melon in like a week.
There's good,
And
just as a little aside, there's good melon and scotched egg content on the official Severance podcast this week. If anybody wants to check it out, they talk
wow,
about those decisions. So
we'll have to
quite
check
quite,
that
quite interesting.
out. So we have the bereavement ceremony. Miss Wong does not get to play Theremin, but the whole thing's entertaining. You mentioned in your summary, hey, we were right, basically, in drawing the connection to the Hang In There poster, because Irving has put the directions to the exports hall behind it. Dylan finds them, puts it back. Um, Presumably we'll pick up on that later.
Yeah,
Right.
I think this is a great way to keep Dylan and Irving connected, right? For Dylan to sort of pick up the pieces of Irving's search and go take this for him, and hopefully it ends in somehow, some way them reuniting. But I also have to think that I was struck by, if Dylan saw that and put the pieces together that quickly during a funeral, is Milchick not going to check that poster? I mean, he clearly told Irv to stop talking after he said hang in there. So is he not checking that as well?
Yeah, has he not put it together? Maybe.
Yeah.
I guess, or we have to consider the other possibility. As you said, how did Milchick know about the sex? Well, because they were watching or listening, right? Milchick told them previously in the season that they weren't being watched in that break room, which is now more like a break room in the traditional sense. Do we believe that? Yeah, so does Milchek know that that's there or not?
Yeah.
He's kind of on an interesting arc. I mean, he's not super happy about the performance review, clearly, but not just in the way of, I don't know how to put this. He's not just like a dedicated employee who got a bad performance review and is sad about it. It seems like he's irked a little bit
Yeah,
more.
he's on an island right now. He is solo. There is no one who seems to be on his side or standing up for him or that is his ally. I mean, also clocked for whatever it's worth in that regard. This is the third of 5 episodes where we have zero Harmony Cobell
Mhm.
in this season. Whether that's going to lead to something with her returning, I don't know, but he just is, I mean, a guy alone adrift right now with no one seems to be on his side.
Yeah, and I thought about this when he tries to ask Natalie about her experience receiving the paintings. My first reaction was, we didn't need this. We
Yeah.
already got this before. We already read their facial expressions before. But I started thinking about it another way, that the one positive in his performance review was that he received the paintings with grace. And here he's kind of tried to connect with Natalie about how, oh, of course I appreciate them, but they're kind of racist, right? Like,
Yeah.
let's connect a little bit here. And she totally refuses that. Natalie seems to be in a real position of power at Lumen. I mean, I don't know. Is she really? Maybe we don't know. She's kind of the voice of the
Yeah.
board. Does she
Yeah.
herself have any power? I guess we don't know, but
I think A, don't forget about Milchick's excellent urinalysis that's
yeah.
come back.
I'm sorry.
B,
Yes, yeah.
B, I think that although she even more so than Milchick can't reach out this hand, they're both looking for connection, relationship, empathy, something with with all that they're having to deal with. And I think Milchick is willing to do it, trying to do it. Natalie just doesn't feel like she can.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely read it that way. Great face acting
Yes.
from Natalie in particular. But yeah, so the isolation is where Milchick, but then Drummond says, we got to get back to basics, treat them as what they really are, right? You noted that line in our notes here. I already noted the what Miss Wong says about making them feel like people. Another scene, Helena says they're animals. Further thoughts along these lines. I mean, it's
Yeah,
largely like a
I just
dehumanization, right?
I just clocked the fact that this is certainly an Egan characterization of who they are, but just sort of what do they think they are? But almost at this point, when you say things like that, they're effing animals, makes them feel like people, treat them as what they really are. It's almost like they just think they're slaves and they're subhuman and they're people, or not even people. They are um, just labor to be exploited for whatever end they want. And we're getting more depth of how that goes within not only the family but the workers, sort of like Miss Wong within Lumen.
Yeah, I think that's good. I question it a little bit only in terms of how I've said multiple times. I think we have to take the Kier Egan stuff seriously. So, like, or going back to the piece I wrote after season one, the kind of theory type piece, I kept
Mhm.
insisting that Lumen really does care about its employees, and that's what's terrifying. It's
Yeah,
not that they just want to exploit you; it's that they really do care.
yeah,
Um, so I don't know how that fits together with this stuff, but I think you're on the right track in terms of um they are not being viewed as certainly they're not being viewed as like persons with rights, you know.
yeah. To have
Um,
Wong and Drummond, I mean, sort of like the two ends of the employee spectrum, right? To say those things, make them feel like people. We don't want that, and treat them what they really are. There's no explanation there. But yeah, just sort of clock that they're making a point to tell us their, again, sort of the eganization of these workers.
yeah. Well, so we need to talk about Irving a bit more.
Yeah.
Starting in the office, I just wanted to note a couple of things here, right? Because Milchick does give in and let them have a bereavement event or whatever they call it. Um, I love the scene when they get back to MDR and they've got their new work tri stations, and Dylan's like, if you're taking feedback, I hate it, and is kind of like refusing to go
Yeah.
to this like trifle desk. But then also, I thought it was interesting. I wanted to note this: the photos of the team.
Yes. Yes.
Irving's been taken out of the photo.
Yes.
What I think is interesting to note here is back in season 1, when Petey left, they took a new photo with
Yeah.
Helly, and there are kind of extended scenes in terms of Mark changing out the photos and all of that, right? So they didn't do that here. Instead, they simply like photoshopped Irving out, right? Now, one thing this put me in mind of was Leon Trotsky. Do you know the connection I'm making already, or?
I'm trying to connect that, but no, you're gonna have to tell me what it is.
All right. I know we're running short on time. I'll try to do this quickly. There is a famous photo of Stalin and someone else, at least, is still in it, and I'm blanking. And Trotsky was originally in the photo. Leon Trotsky was a significant member of, the Communist Party and as the beginnings of the Russian Revolution, the Bolsheviks, 1917, all of that kind of stuff. And Trotsky's really interesting because he had a real kind of democratic through line, philosophically speaking. Anyway, short version, Stalin and Trotsky had a falling out, and Stalin had him removed from this photo as though he had never been a part of the Communist Party at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
They further exiled Trotsky, but that wasn't good enough. They eventually had him killed. So
Interesting.
I'm drawing a parallel here between Trotsky and Irving, to be clear. Both removed from the photo, both have been exiled. So is Lumen going to ultimately say exiling Irving isn't good enough? We have to kill him.
Yeah, especially if something comes to light of what's been speculated over and over again that there is some past to Irving within Lumen. There's some other connection to Lumen that Irving has. He clearly has been researching them. He's been trying to find out who they are. Yeah, if those things are uncovered, if they have not already been uncovered, then we just need to not just fire Irv. We need to put an end to Irv.
Yeah, because what is he doing out there? Who's he calling on the phone?
Exactly.
We have that question. Still, best guesses are things like he's calling Ragabi, but I don't know if that tracks quite. We know there's also some whole mind collective, or maybe they're just figures we don't know at all yet. So that's a big question. I presume we'll get some answer to. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
I am really curious to see what happens between him and Bert. They don't seem to know each other on the outside. Their interaction here, though, is really good and entertaining. Apparently, Irving's going to come over for eat some ham.
Yeah.
Bring
An odd just you're just going to invite somebody into your your relationship that you think you might have been romantically entangled with. But I was trying to clock if either one of them was sort of playing coy or faking that they knew the other one or were aware of the
yeah,
relationship. And I couldn't quite tell, but that might still be there. And I just couldn't grab it.
yeah. I felt that ambiguity as well, but I think it probably they don't know, and it works to read it that way.
Yeah.
I loved when Bert says, "We like red wine, expensive." What a G! I was like,
It was
bring expensive red wine.
what was the it was a very Christopher Walken line, just something like I have something about people that show up to my door, call it a
Call it a
quirk.
quirk.
Yeah, just very Walken line.
Yeah, it's great. So I'm glad we're getting more Christopher Walken. As you mentioned, we haven't seen Misco Bell narratively. I think that makes sense. Um, you know, how she worked in at the beginning of the season, that made sense. But now it kind
Yeah,
of makes sense for her to be gone. I presume we will see her again, though. I presume that character will re-enter the story.
certainly so.
Let's see what else things we want to hit. Make sure we hit the changes to Rickon's book. Mostly, I just found this entertaining. Yeah,
The Rickon actor is the one who's featured on the podcast this week, and he has some very interesting takes on Rickon and who
oh
that
yeah,
character.
Michael
Yeah.
Chernus. That's great. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I noted in my recap of how he says Trojan's horse, and I thought that
Yes.
was a nice little element of how he gets that just a little wrong, you know. But the way he gets it a little wrong kind of indicates like maybe he doesn't really know the story of the Trojan horse, you know.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
Oh, I cannot leave without telling you this because I clocked this when I read your piece 1 hour after I listened to the podcast. Michael Chernus describes Rickon as fake erudite, and you did as well in your piece recapping this week. So you guys are tracking on the
Same
same path.
words.
Yes,
Yeah,
same word.
there we go. I wrote it first. Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know when I wrote the podcast, but I haven't heard the podcast when I wrote it anyway. You noted in your summary that the beginning, the tools we see are dental tools. You know, so if anyone was curious about that, that's definitely something I confirmed. I don't know why they're sending a dentist down to the testing floor. Someone needs a root canal or something.
This is just, I don't know, final polish pieces on somebody they're cloning down there or, doing some dental work to make sure they look right. I mean, it's just wild speculation. Who knows?
Is it a clue that he's whistling Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald? Who is the actor? Because they are at pains to not show us his face. I definitely have a guess about that based on who's on the cast list, but I don't know if that would feel like a spoiler, so I'll
Yeah, we may
refrain.
save that for the next time.
But I think we're going to see him again
Yeah.
because I think I know who the actor is based on looking at the cast list, and if it is that actor, then we're going to see him again. But I mean, also like how they seed this in here. This is you've got to follow up on this, and so
Yeah.
looking forward to seeing where that goes. Anything else you want to hit on before we wrap up here?
No, I think that's it. We've got episode 6 coming up. Attila. Wonder what that's in reference to.
Yeah, I mean Attila the Hun, and I don't know. We'll see. Um, oh, we didn't mention how Drummond says completing the Cold Harbor file will be one of the greatest moments in the history of the planet.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, that's
so
something that's strictly going to come up. I mean, you think fire, founding penicillin, finishing Cold Harbor. These are the greatest moments on our planet. But we'll see what that means.
yeah, I mean it did remind me of how last week Milchick told the innies during the Ortbo that the waterfall was the tallest one on the planet. But the context is so different here. I don't think it's I don't know. Am I supposed to be thinking about that or not? I don't think this is
Exactly,
like
exactly right. Yeah,
a lie or hyperbole quite like that. It seems like Lumen does think, hey,
yeah.
when we complete this project, it's going to be, as significant as the creation of fire or something. So, um, all right. Thanks as always for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed the podcast. If so, please do leave a good rating, review, what have you. If you're on YouTube, hit the thumbs up. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can follow TV Obsessive on social media. Search for TV Obsessive. And of course, be sure to check out the website, tvobsessive.com, where you can find weekly recaps by yours truly on Severance, along with articles about any number of other TV shows. And we'll be back with you next week.
All right. See you then.